heat wave arrives across much of California, expected to create dangerous fire conditions and push some inland parts of the state, like Fresno, Sacramento, Bakersfield, Modesto, and other inland cities, into triple-digit temperatures. There's little respite until the weekend at the earliest. And according to the National Weather Service office, this level of heat could pose a danger to the entire population if proper heat safety is not followed. As we move into the summer seasons, hotter and drier conditions mean that California will likely face higher risk of wildfires. Wildfire smoke, heat, power outages, and dangerous water conditions. Today's briefing will highlight resources available to help communities address these challenges. Known as the Summer Safety Package, this is a comprehensive suite of preparedness messages and materials geared especially to vulnerable populations. EMS and CBM will continue to keep our audience informed through our statewide media briefings in partnership with Listos, California. Today with us, we will be hearing from Amy Palmer with CalOSHA, David Lawrence from the California Weather's Forecast. Extreme heat impacts on the body, we'll hear from Dr. Rita Nguyen. Charlene, I'm not going to butcher your name, I'm sorry, Gioriani, deal with the workers' rights during extreme heat events. We have SAC Fire Captain Andrew Ramos, and we will end the briefing with question and answers, but also not before hearing from Sonya Harris, who is a campaign advisor over at Listos, California. So with that, I would like us to go ahead and get started. And Amy, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Regina. It's my pleasure to join this group. I know some of you from past lives, and I assumed the Director of Communications spot here at CalOSHA on April 1. It's moments like these that we're so grateful for your partnership. Obviously, the disaster landscape is changing, and we're looking at multiple disasters. We're in one of those moments right now, so this content is especially helpful, we hope, and we count on you to communicate to help us communicate to everyone in California. Obviously, we're preparing for extreme heat, wildfires, smoke, power outages. I'm going to let some of the experts on this call go over that with you, but we will remain activated through the end of this weekend, monitoring events and resource needs and responding to needs around the state. So with that, I'll turn it back over. Thanks, Regina.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. You would think that I was on mute. You would think that we're out of the pandemic. I should never be on mute like that. Thank you so much, Amy, for that. David, we will go ahead and go next to you. Give us a landscape of what we've been hearing about, what we're seeing with the weather.
Absolutely. Thank you, Regina, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm David Lawrence, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And as has been widely talked about, we are just at the beginning stages of what looks to be a fairly long duration heat event across much of the state of California. Temperatures are obviously quite hot in many areas today, but we will see them ramp up, and that heat will ramp up in intensity heading through mid to late week, continuing into this coming weekend as well, and likely through probably at least the first half of next week, if not a little beyond. So a very long duration, we're talking probably 7 to 9 days for many areas, long duration heat event across the state of California. The longevity of this particular event is what we're most concerned with. We'll see daytime high temperatures for many interior areas reaching anywhere between 100 to 115 degrees each afternoon. And the bigger story is likely to be over the long haul, overnight low temperatures not providing much relief, as readings only dip into the 70s, perhaps holding in the lower 80s for some locations. So we won't see those cool overnight temperatures to give us that relief. So those two factors, the length of this heat wave and those very warm overnight temperatures are very likely to compound the impacts from this particular heat event. And that's why we do have excessive heat warnings. You can see on the screen here those areas that are shaded in pink for a large majority of the state of California. Those either begin today, tomorrow, or Thursday, depending on location. It really doesn't matter. The big story here is that this is a long duration event lasting through at least the middle of next week, potentially just beyond as well. And speaking of that, if you're curious about when we may see some respite from this particular heat event, it won't be until at least the middle to latter portions of next week. So again, expecting significant health, safety, and other impacts, again, due to the duration of this heat. Taking a look at the seasonal outlook, if you're curious where we head after this particular event, this is an average temperature forecast for the months of July, August, and September. We are seeing a much stronger signal for above normal temperatures to the east of California across the Great Basin. But across the state of California, honestly, the climate signal for this time period going forward is a bit mixed. There's no really strong signal to suggest that we may see persistently hot temperatures throughout these 3 months, but rather we're likely to see sort of this up and down nature, kind of quite similar to what we've seen this summer so far, with some stretches of pretty intense heat followed by a bit of relief. So I encourage folks to really pay attention on that weekly basis going forward, as again, the signals are a little bit mixed for the outlook the remainder of the summer. But let's focus again on the short term, really keep that focus there, as will be a very impactful heat event statewide. Happy to take questions at the end. Otherwise, thanks for having us this morning. We always appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, David. And I know that in my notes, I didn't say that please make sure you speak, as Sandy would tell us, slowly for our interpreters that are also not super slow, but just moderately, so that the interpreters are able to capture everything that you're saying. And with that, I'd like to turn it over now to Dr. Rita Nguyen with CDPH.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. As you can imagine, heat waves and heat alerts are really critical to saving lives in California. People really do underestimate exactly how dangerous heat waves can be for Californians. And heat waves such as this one kills more people directly than any other weather-related hazard. Certain groups are certainly at higher risk of a heat-related health impact, and those include those who are unhoused, those working outdoors, or those who are working indoors without air conditioning, older adults, pregnant people, infants and children, people with disabilities, those with chronic health conditions, and lower income populations. But a key takeaway is actually that anyone can be a victim of life-threatening heat stroke. And that's because, sorry, you can go back for a second. A lot of this doesn't have to do necessarily with the absolute temperature. Oftentimes it can just be if folks are not acclimated to a hot temperature and there's a fast rise, which for where I'm in Contra Costa County, it's 10 degrees hotter today than it was yesterday. So it makes me worried when there's sudden changes. Just as David said previously, when the temperature doesn't cool at night and when it's for a long period of time, all these things increase the risk that folks will actually have health-related injuries and potentially death from heat. It's also really important for folks who don't have air conditioning to recognize that they are in trouble or could be in trouble. And so again, just really want to emphasize that it's an unfortunate missed risk that a lot of folks overlook. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the good news is they are preventable. Some of the illnesses that can relate that are related to heat include heat cramps, which you can feel in your muscles, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. The symptoms are actually very similar between heat exhaustion and stroke. When it gets more severe, then it's considered heat stroke, and it's a life-threatening emergency for which you should seek 911 support. The other aspect of this is that heat exacerbates other health conditions. So we do know that when the weather gets hotter, and certainly with heat waves, there's an increased risk of heart attack, stroke, complications from your diabetes. So irrespective of just heat illnesses, it actually just makes underlying diseases worse because people are not staying hydrated enough and their bodies are under a lot of stress. So some of the warning signs of heat-related illness include things like heavy sweating, muscle cramps, weakness, headache, nausea or vomiting, paleness, tiredness, irritability, and dizziness. The most worrisome symptoms are if people are getting confused or are passing out or are vomiting. We should really seek medical attention right away. The other thing to worth note is that when folks are starting to heat up too much, it impairs their decision making and their thinking. So you may not be in a great position to even make good decisions of how to get cool or stop your activity. So it's really important that we pay attention to each other and make sure we're aware of all the dangers, especially if we're outside and exerting ourselves. Next slide, please. Sometimes the symptoms can be different depending on whether or not you're an older adult or an infant. We'll have these slides shared out just so you could learn some of those details. Next slide. So the 3 things we try to say in terms of tips is stay hydrated, stay cool, and stay informed. So it's important to stay hydrated and drink before you're actually thirsty, because it helps to cool off your body, and you sometimes lose track of how much you're sweating. You should stay away from sugary or alcoholic drinks. They actually dehydrate you more. And then avoid caffeine to the extent possible, because again, it also can dehydrate you and lower your blood pressure. Folks with certain medical conditions related to blood pressure that have to pay attention to their fluid intake or their salt intake should talk to their doctor. Next slide, please. The other tip is to stay cool. I think the most important message here is actually to rethink your activities. So folks may think they'll be okay with that basketball game or a camping or hike, and then that's how people get in trouble, even young, healthy people. And so just when there's a health alert, just be mindful of readjusting or rethinking what you're going to do. Stay cool and in air-conditioned places. If you can't find one, a lot of cities will offer a cooling center. You can go to a mall or a library. Use wet cloths in showers, and wear lightweight clothing and sunblock. Next slide. Stay informed. Just as David was saying, pay attention to the weather forecast. Heat alerts. I know that in this time of climate change, we're getting more and more of these alerts, and there's a bit of alert fatigue. And that's when it gets dangerous, is when people stop paying attention and start dismissing the alerts. But please do pay attention to the alerts. And then keep an eye out on your neighbors and those who you think might be more vulnerable, like older adults who are more isolated. Next slide. I'll pass it on. We had one more slide just to emphasize for workers who have no choice but to be outside or indoors in an air-conditioned setting. But employees are actually obligated by law to provide adequate shade, rest, and fluids to employees. So just wanted to emphasize that higher risk group. And with that, I'll turn it back to the host.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nguyen. Next, we'll hear from Charlene Gioriani.
Yes.
About workers'
Hi.
rights and during extreme heat events.
Yes. So CalOSHA regulations include one on heat illness prevention in outdoor places of employment. Employees have rights to access to water, shade, and the weather must be monitored, and workers must be watched for acclimatization during high heat. Employees must also be trained on heat illness. Access to water. Employees have right to access to water, which means that potable drinking water is clean and available at no cost and be in enough quantities. Next slide. Access to shade is required when temperatures exceed 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Please keep in mind that shaded areas must not cause exposure to another health or safety hazard. Next. When temperatures exceed 95 degrees, a buddy system should be in place, and employees must be monitored for signs of heat illness. They must also be encouraged to drink water. Next. Also, when temperatures exceed 95 degrees, cool-down rest periods are required every 2 hours. Next. Workers must be observed during acclimatization. If you're a new worker on the job, you'll be observed for the first 14 days of employment. Next slide. Employers are required to establish and implement a heat illness prevention written plan and provide training for employees and supervisors that include a plan for emergencies, where to get fresh water, shade, and rest. Next slide. On June 20, 2024, the Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board approved California Code of Regulations Title 8, Section 3396, Heat Illness Prevention in Indoor Places of Employment. This standard applies to most workplaces where the indoor temperature reaches 82 degrees. It establishes required safety measures for indoor workplaces to prevent worker exposure to risk of heat illness. The Office of Administrative Law has 30 working days to review the proposal, and the standard boards requested that the regulation take effect immediately after OAL approval. Generally, the regulation would apply when indoor temperatures are above 82 degrees. It is designed to be very similar to the outdoor standard. The biggest difference between these regulations is in subsection E. So rather than having high heat procedures, the indoor heat regulation requires employers to assess the indoor temperatures and generally, if it's above 87 degrees, cool the workplace or implement other engineering controls. Next slide. Employees have a right to file a complaint of workplace hazards to CalOSHA. They have a right to exercise their labor rights without retaliation or discrimination. If you have been retaliated against, please contact the Labor Commissioner's office. Next. During the pandemic, we recognized the need for workers to be able to call us and file complaints or get safety information, so we established a bilingual call center. Anyone can call our number, which is right here listed on another slide, to connect with a live CalOSHA rep between the hours of 9 and 7. You can ask questions related to health and safety in the workplace. Our bilingual reps are all former DOSH managers or senior staff. They're very knowledgeable and are available to provide information on topics like heat illness prevention and wildfire smoke, and help workers file complaints. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I know that we've had some questions in the chat, and so please forgive me for not answering all of them. I think we're getting through, and I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to do their presentation. But I know that there was a question in the chat that came. Does CalOSHA have data? Let me see here. Do you have weather data?
We do use weather data. We work closely with
Emergency.
National Weather Service to collect data. We monitor that, and when they reach certain temperatures, we do send emails to staff, to our enforcement officers, and to other outreach teams so that they can reach the workers.
Okay, I think this now came out. Do they have data on the violation? So are there companies that I would gather that have violated not having, making sure that their workers are safe? Is there a lot of that, or meaning that there may be more education needed for the work businesses, or are you guys not collect that data?
We do have that data. We do have data on citations, not just for heat, but for a whole wide variety of health and safety hazards. Those are available to the public online. I can share that information with you. Just send me a reminder and I'll send you a link to that.
Okay.
What was the other question? Can you please?
I think it was whether, I think that the question was split up. So I think that answered the question. So if you had data on businesses that had violations, so we would be able to possibly, analyze and look at, maybe stories around who may need just more education and just knowing whether it's construction or whether it's, a plumbing company, they may just need more education. And I think that's what they were going with, but a link would be great. So I will have you drop a link in the chat.
So I have the link for enforcement, but we also do a lot of outreach. We have a bilingual community engagement team that goes out and does outreach to workers and provide provide information on worker safety. We also have a consultation unit, and they work with employers and also provide publications and documents and materials to provide safe safety for the workers.
Great.
So I can also provide a link for all those publications as well, and I can drop that in the chat.
That would be great. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you.
Now we'll turn it on over to Sac City Fire Captain Andrew Ramos.
Hello, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all. Again, I'm Andrew Ramos, the City of Sacramento Fire Department, and we operate the CalOSHA Swift Water Rescue Team 7. It's stationed here in Sacramento, and we have a 14-person team who are well-trained in water rescue and medical training. We conduct about 30 water-related rescues a year, which is a lot. And unfortunately, a majority of those go with deaths in the drowning. So that's why we're here today, is to increase the awareness of the drownings and to really emphasize the need to wear a life jacket. Let's go to the next slide. So as you've heard many times, the bodies of water right now are colder and deeper and faster than normal. We have some really fast-moving waterways right now. We were just training up there last week, and although they may appear to be safe to wander into, we would say use extreme caution. We cannot have all of our emergency staff along the river's edge to help out personnel that need it. So we need each and every one of you to be your own safety monitor. Look and make sure that your family, they're wearing their life jackets, they're able to swim. You don't turn your back on your family members or people that may not be as strong as swimmers. Speaking about strong swimmers, they can also find themselves in trouble. There's hidden debris under the surface of the water that can contribute to these dangerous situations that you may not even realize are there. The rocks can be slippery and also hidden. You know, waterway is moving across the water, and next thing you know, you strike that rock. So we want to make sure that everyone is paying very close attention to their surrounding areas. Yeah, next slide. Some tips. So let's remember that life vests can save your life. I was just speaking with another fire captain today, and he said in his 30+ years, he's never saved a person wearing a life vest. So that should go a long distance with all of you here listening to that. Wear your life jackets. Make sure that the children's life jacket is properly fastened and that you are checking it so that when you check the vest, that it's not going above their head. You want to make sure that it's tight around the larger part of their body and it's comfortable to wear. It's tight, but still comfortable so they can still move about. It's not chafing the skin. Maybe wear a sun shirt in between the two to prevent that chafing. You can also borrow vests. The city of Sacramento and local agencies around up and down California as well. Try and reach out to them and see where you can borrow a vest. There may be someone in your next door neighbor who may not need that vest for the weekend. Ask to borrow it. You'll want to use a vest that's the Coast Guard approved, and also for kids, make sure there's a strap that's going between their legs. We also want to share that if you do fall in the water, don't panic. Breathe slowly, stay calm, kick off those heavy shoes, and make your way to the sides of the stream. Try and keep your head above water, look out for debris, and get to safety as quickly as possible. If you're on a boat that is flipped over, get to that top of the boat and wave down for bypassers or bystanders to make that emergency phone call. Most importantly, though, if someone's near you and they fall in that cold water and they're struggling, please don't dive in after them. Throw something that's flotation towards them, help them get onto it, yell to them, try and have them grab that. But you have to activate the 911 system. We cannot get there if we don't know there's an emergency happening. And we do not want someone else falling prey to that cold, swift water. So just activate the 911, try and throw. We, as a fire department, our thing is throw, row, tow, then we go. So we definitely have our own measures as well that we use for water safety. I hope I leave you with that. I hope that you have a safe summer and remind yourselves to drink that water today because that's the water you're using tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Let's see here. Okay, I was looking to see if there was a question, a direct question for you, but I don't think that there was a direct question for you. Or wait. Also, I think there was a direct question that inboxed me around fire precautions in heat. So I know that you're talking a lot about water because the heat is going to flock people to water, and I know that that's something we will see in any community where there's going to be bodies of water. People probably will take the 4th of July holiday and get into the water. But is there also any precautions that relates to fires? Like do we see more house fires? Are we going to see more brush fires? Will we see anything like that more or less because we're getting ready to go into these double-digit temperatures?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And unfortunately, yes, the answer to that question is yes. We're going to see a lot more fires. We've already here in my own region have seen a large number of grass fires, just grass fires in the backyards of homes around the neighborhoods. It's just there's a high heat, low humidity, and all it takes is a little spark to get them going. We all know the 4th of July is coming. We all love to enjoy our fireworks, but those are really dangerous around these grasses, these dry grasses, high heat, low humidity. It's just a spark waiting to happen. So if you're going to mow your lawn or something, make sure there's a water hose nearby. All it takes is a spark from a rock to ignite something. And if you're using the fireworks, I would say use the same fireworks, but still have some kind of water source nearby. And then remember to cool them before you throw them away, because that's the next thing that's going to happen. You put it in your garbage can, and then you're going to catch your garbage can on fire, and then we're just going to have more problems. So yeah, with more heat comes all of those stresses. And so, yeah, it's just more dangerous, right?
Definitely. And let's see here. So I think we'll head to our Sonya Harris, our Listos advisor, to go over the Listos campaign and resources.
Thank you so much, Regina, and appreciate all of the work of Ethnic Media Services and California Black Media to help us bring this together today. As Amy mentioned right up at the top, we know that extreme weather events are really creating a complex environment for Californians. Because of that beautiful wet weather we saw and needed, it created a lot of additional growth in wildfire-prone areas, and as the captain just talked about, also creates water conditions that can be quite dangerous. And as we sort of look at some of these climate swings, the hotter and drier conditions are really something that we need to continue to adapt to. We're fortunate that the governor, in his foresight in 2019, following the Camp Fire, along with a partnership with the legislature, funded a pilot for Listos, California in 2019. And since then, we've been doing a lot of learning, a lot of listening, and a lot of working alongside trusted messengers, whether that be our partners in ethnic media, or the nearly 100 community-based organizations that we've had on the team, for the last year or so that I've been working on Listos. And really, what have we learned between that and formative research? It's really Californians are ready to do their part. Californians are excited to be more prepared, and that's mostly because they know that those steps will help their families stay safer. But a lot of the questions we've been getting is, where do I start? And what are the resources that I have available to kind of help me on that journey? If I'm a parent of small children, I happen to be a toddler mom myself, how do I make that easy when I'm running from, work to kid duties to family duties and so on and so forth. So if we move to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about how we really kicked off. Well, and I'm sure those slides will come back, but in May, we really thought about kicking off ahead of Memorial Day with summer content. So, you know, as we looked at the threats for the summer, how do we begin to prepare, especially those in rural communities, for wildfires? There's a lot of education that our friends over at CAL FIRE do around home hardening and making sure that, you know, your home is clear of some of those, you know, things that might be a threat to the house itself and some of the structures and property. And really wanting to make sure that our rural counterparts also thought about all the living beings on that property, whether it's friends, family, neighbors, you know, or animals. And so we also wanted to make sure to call your attention and reminder to that package that we released in May, because for better or worse, all of those preparedness tips will certainly be good information as we head well into the next several months. So I'm excited, if we move to the next slide, to be the human here with you today. But really, this is an incredible movement that an entire team has really been working towards, whether that's our colleagues at the Governor's Office of Emergency Service, Amy and her team, or, you know, a variety of different folks that have worked in community alongside community like Sandy and Regina, really helping us think about how do we provide clear, informative, and relatable information that really doesn't scare our Californians. We know they've got a lot on their minds based on the research we've been doing, and we really want this to be an accessible and approachable sort of topic for them. As we have learned, as I mentioned, through all of the years that we've been able to build this sort of beautiful resource that is Listos, California, is really a call to action to stay plugged into your locals. The emergency alert system here in California is managed by each local government. And so you'll notice that on a lot of our content, we're really trying to drive Californians to make sure that they're signed up for those emergency alerts. In addition to being prepared, one of the most important things Californians can do is be listening and at the ready and to heed the warning of their local officials. Really, all incidents are local, and those are the folks like Captain Ramos that are monitoring those conditions locally, that are going to know what are the best things for Californians to do right there on the spot. So you'll notice, and this is the place we really need your help, is to continue to drive people to signing up for those emergency alerts. And we know counties are making great strides in language accessibility in a variety of places, especially this, but we've still got work to do. So just making sure that Californians that might speak languages other than English understand the importance of the difference between the word warning and an evacuation you know, alert itself is so critical as well. Next slide, and I'll work to slow down pace a little. We really thought about our summer content in that way, as trying to lift up key sort of tips, top 3 tips in a few different areas. So here on screen, you'll see some of the sample content that we're releasing today around staying safe for extreme heat. You know, we really wanted to show the people element and what makes California so vibrant, and some of the tips you can sort of be leaning into. So here you'll see a family in the water with appropriate safety tools for that, the parent and the child there in the floating device. And you'll see in the center family enjoying the park with some additional sort of umbrella or shade, and really just wanting to reinforce all of those tips around being hydrated, checking on others, and of course, staying in cool places. If we move to the next slide, you'll see a little bit of our social content. Some of the research that we've been doing really talks about how some of our younger audience, that 18 to 39, doesn't feel as ready for a disaster as maybe some of, you know, their older counterparts. And so how do we continue to feed the way Californians are taking in information, whether it be through local ethnic media outlets or social media content? We really want to be resonant. So you'll see a few examples of the tools that we've put together for you. The next slide just shows a couple samples of some of our wildfire smoke content. Again, as we go through the summer, unfortunately, we may have smoke impact to areas that aren't even close to where the fire may be. So those particles can be very, very dangerous to your health, especially if you have pre-existing conditions. Here you'll see 3 key steps: checking air quality with local government and understanding air quality index in your area to help guide your decision making, closing doors and staying inside, and other tips. And the last sort of example here that we have is around power outages. We know during extreme weather events, just like in the winter when it might rain and we've got down power lines, power outages are something that we always want to be aware of and plan for. So here, please consider signing up with your local utility for any planned shutoffs that may be associated with safety and prevention. Making sure that our devices are powered. Most folks always rely on that phone, sometimes more than maybe we should. So making sure that batteries are powered up, and of course, in the event of a power outage, making sure to keep those fridges closed so that families can sustain with basic needs. We also have a really incredible social media toolkit. On the next slide here, we'll see a little bit of an example. Again, our goal is really to show the human component, continue to be bright and offer solutions to Californians. So we've got a variety of different content that we welcome you to take and use on your own with suggested captions and also alt text to help any device reading, tools that Californians might be using. Couple more slides here. We are so appreciative of the positive feedback that we've been getting on a series of videos that Listos, California curated last year ahead of some of the rain we saw at the first half of the year. We know that being an equity-centered campaign, many of our communities don't actually read and write their language, one of which are some of our indigenous communities that are primarily an oral language. So to help address some of the gaps that we might see in information, we're excited this later this month to be releasing a second series of these indigenous language videos that we're curating with community-based organizations in California to help us, again, provide more tools. Here's a sample on screen. We've seen more than 10,000 views on these videos, so we know that they're working and that they're important to community members. And let's see, our last sort of tactic that we wanted to highlight, again, it started with a pilot last year, refocusing on that importance of signing up for an emergency alert. The Listos California team has been able to call over 3 million Californians. So when we think about some of the barriers people have and misperceptions, we like to think that this is really a flagship program of Listos California. We're able to call you up. So say it was Regina. I would say, hi, Regina, my name's Sonya. I'm calling on behalf of Listos California, a program of CalOSHA. We just want to make sure you know how important it is to sign up for that local emergency alert. Regina says, I have no idea what you're talking about. And we can use the friendly online tool that we've created to help her get in contact with the Riverside County Emergency Alert system and help her sign up right up on the spot. Of course, we've got all of the importance of making sure that our staff are conscientious of disclaimers and providing information on who they are to avoid any scams, because we know that those also exist and we're seeing some of those heightened sort of scam attempts, especially on non-English speaking communities. And the most important piece is of the Californians we talked to, we can confirm that 1 in 4 are now signed up for those life-saving emergency alerts. Incredible return here if we're thinking about tangible benefit that we're providing to Californians with this technical assistance. 2 more slides. Just last but not least, as I mentioned, what we've been able to build. Our Listos pilot really started on preparedness. And last year, we were able to build an entire suite of evergreen materials based on what you can do before, during, and after disasters. We've got a variety of other tools to help. We know often with community work that our trusted messengers are doing, they often want a couple extra minutes with those parents. So having tools to keep those kids occupied, and also helping them think about what emergency preparedness means, even if they are a fourth grader, it is another really great tool that we love to highlight, really to think about kind of that whole family approach, as we know that's really what we're doing in community. And last but not least, last year, we were able to welcome over 650 Californians to a variety of community summits that Listos California produced during National Preparedness Month, Emergency Preparedness Month in September. We got overwhelming feedback that the connections that the community members were able to make, the fact that we had emergency response staff there alongside them talking about scenarios and how they could be better prepared and identifying more ways to connect with each other was incredible. So we're so fortunate to be kicking off in August and extending that time frame a little bit so we could stop at a couple extra cities and really bringing that community connectivity to the forefront, which is really about long-term resilience for California and helping us be a little bit more prepared for whatever happens next. I think with that, Regina, I'll turn it back over to you. And with just one quick flag here, the site that you see is Governor Newsom's recent announcement around ready.ca.gov. It's really a tool to help us traffic Californians to the right place that they need to go. You'll see at the top here, we've got an extreme heat banner so that folks can find their local cooling center. CalOES does yeoman's work to make sure that that list is updated in coordination with locals so that we can kind of have a one-stop shop for that. Again, those evergreen materials, and last but not least, that best place for most up-to-date emergency information is our partners at CalOES, so it'll take you directly there. So I'll flip it back over to you, Regina.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know that that was a lot that we got through, and I know that people are in the process of asking questions. So as reporters tee up any questions that they may have, I'm going to start off with a couple of questions, and I'll just punt this to each, each presenter today who's with us and ask the question, what have you learned from the last year, and what are you doing differently this summer? And I could take it in order. Amy, if you want to kick off. I mean, I know you weren't over in
Sure.
you weren't over in CalOES, but
No, I think certainly one of the things we have learned about heat, as you heard from the speakers, is really the importance of not underestimating it. So many of us enjoy air conditioning and have family members, but it's really important for Californians to understand how deadly heat can be for individuals who are isolated, and the importance of checking in on your coworkers, checking in on older Californians. That, I think, and the reality that heat can kill hundreds of people, far more than wildfires and many other disasters. I think that's one of our learnings, and one of the reasons we're taking heat so much more seriously in a coordinated way across the state.
great. David? I mean, you're in weather all the time, but are you still on mute? I don't know if he can be off mute. Is David still on? Maybe he's not on. Okay. Dr. Nguyen.
Yeah, I'll just echo everything Amy said about what we've learned about being very intentional with the more vulnerable populations, including those who need folks checking in on. But also a lot of our efforts have been organized around specific populations, those who are living in, who are unhoused, those who are living in long-term care facilities. So being really focused and intentional about those populations that are more vulnerable and would need extra supports. We've also, due to investments in public health, have been able to stand up more infrastructure to support our locals around climate change. We've developed a lot more tools and guidance to support local health departments and their partners in approaching climate change, because unfortunately, more and more, we will have to be preparing for this and reacting to it and building more resilient communities in the face of extreme weather. So we certainly are growing our efforts, learning every year, and doubling down on equity and focusing on the populations who are most affected.
Great. Charlene. Charlene still with us? Okay, what about you, Captain Ramos?
Thank you. Yeah, our team actually, we're always training on water safety, water rescue. We actually have a marine team right now that I'm actually working on the deployment model right now. That's different than last year. We're gonna have boats in our more dangerous waterways, where we can have people during the 4th of July out there, helping educate the population, and there just in case an emergency arises, so that we can get to the scene much quicker, much faster than we have in the past. We're trying to be a little more proactive and less reactive, while the people are out there in masses. So, but that doesn't mean we can't be at everyone's pool. So let's do some pool safety stuff too.
Great. Charlene, you probably didn't get that question, but trying to see what you learned from last year and what you're doing differently for this summer.
Yes, that's okay. So this year we are upping our enforcement. We are really focused on increasing our inspections. We are working in connection with other agencies as well, and we are increasing our outreach efforts. We have, as I mentioned before, a bilingual community engagement unit that has grown. We have 6 staff up and down the state that will go out and reach out to workers in the field and with CBOs and unions and other labor agents, labor groups that we will meet with. So we are working on, also we are upping our consultation with employers as well. So we are getting that. We are, doing a lot of internal training with our staff, and we are prepared.
Great. And Sonya.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Regina. I wish I almost could turn this into an interactive session just to poll our folks here. But I think it's really an acknowledgement to the over-reliance perhaps on cell phones. We did a little bit of conversation with some real Californians, and only 16% of them had taken the time to write down important phone numbers on a piece of paper. And while that sounds sort of maybe silly, whether you have a charged device or not, or whether or not you may or may not have cell service, to have a handful of those pieces of information, just a slip of paper, somewhere in the kitchen maybe, with, Auntie, or I would say Emo's cell phone number, or, landline, and, Harmony's cell phone number or landline, so that if something were to happen, I could remember how to call them, and where we might meet and when we might meet, are really easy things to do around the kitchen table, or on the way out the door on a busy day, that I think a lot of people take for granted that you're going to have your cell phone in that emergency, and that just might not be the case.
Well, great. Always thinking that the cell phone is always the answer, and sometimes it can be a handicap as well. And I know we're coming on time, but I want to ask you guys one more question before we turn it over. I think I have some questions that have just been working to get queued up from some of the journalists on the call. But the second question for you guys is, what is your biggest concern for public safety as the summer season unfolds?
I'll take that. I have I used to be a newspaper reporter and I covered a lot of drownings and they were just so tragic. And I find those particularly heartbreaking. This year, we've seen incidents of mothers losing children, children losing mothers, young people jumping in rivers to cool off. Those deaths seem so preventable, and we try to track them, and we have really heroic people, our local fire responders here on the call today. But I think I personally would love to enlist your help in reminding people how dangerous the water is this year. It's so fast and so cold, and it's higher because of the higher snowfall. And that just seems to be a message that is just really important for us to hammer home.
Great. Dr. Nguyen?
I'll say two aspects. My first thought was awareness, which you all on this call are a critical part of raising awareness of how serious heat-related illnesses can be. But the public health professional in me also recognizes that awareness can only go so far, because we actually need structural changes to protect communities. And in terms of what you heard from our speaker from CalOSHA, like job protections for workers who are outdoors or folks who are having to be in conditions for their livelihood. And so my other wish is that we have better policies and systems and environments that enable folks to thrive despite the conditions that we are finding ourselves in. And so that's incumbent upon us and our various partners of how can we build more resilient communities. Not just people should know better, because it goes beyond knowing and having knowledge.
Great. Charlene, your biggest concerns for public safety as the summer season unfolds?
Obviously, our biggest concern is worker safety and health. We want to make sure that workers are protected. We find that there may be some industries where there's a rush to get work and workers are afraid to stop and rest, or are even to just get a drink of water. So we want to make sure that workers are well informed of their rights, especially in this high heat. They have a right. I mean, our main thing is water, rest, and shade. So we do want to make sure that workers are provided with those items and have easy access to those items as well. And to please reach out to CalOSHA if they have any questions or if they would like to file a complaint so that we can address those hazards immediately.
And Captain Ramos, your biggest concerns?
Wow, that's there's so much, right? Like there's so much that we respond to. I'm going over the question in my head and I'm thinking we have water issues, we have fire issues, we have driving issues. I mean, under the influence driving, there's just so many things, right? I think that this messaging here is just overall be safe, be mindful of your neighbor, be kind, and have a good time. We all want to have a good time. We just need to be safe doing that. Yeah, I think that's good.
And Sonya, your biggest concerns?
I hope that this comes across the way that I intend it to. But I think California is an amazing place that is the home to what I like to think of the most resilient people on earth. We are people that come as refugees. We are people, in the case of my mother, that I've been able to see as immigrants who came to have a life for their children that they couldn't have dreamed. And I think a lot of that builds a sense of confidence that is so great. But as we think about some of how our environment is changing, I think of us as kind of, maybe this is too many cell phone anecdotes, but the battery on your cell phone. And as we think about the day in and day out heat and the impact that, Mr. Lawrence talked about, that cell phone is sort of ticking away and that energy is sneaking away. And you might think you're feeling really great, but that last 5%, I think you don't know if that's going to be the danger that's going to send you to the hospital. So really taking that strength that I think we always want to take to keep going and keep doing and keep, sort of that resilience piece, and just taking a moment to pause and really check in with yourself, on your own safety, and check in with others. So.
Well, with that, I think that was a good question. I think I have a question that I did not see, and she put it back in the chat for me. And Pilar asked the question, and this could be punted to as many of you as possible. We have about 5 minutes left. But do you think that these programs and the funding for them will be in peril if there are changes in the national government? This year's elections feel significant for every single area. Is this area one of them? For example, some states have eliminated the mention of climate change in their regulations. Did I answer that right? Did I say that right, Pilar, for you?
Regina, I'm happy to take this one.
Okay.
As someone who has had the opportunity to navigate and assist different state initiatives over the course of the last 16 years, whether that be census outreach in a time where our federal landscape was not welcome to all Californians, I would say, there's no important time than ever for Californians to be engaged in their government and really paying attention and finding the ways to participate within the system and structures that are afforded to them. Your voice is so important, and really lifting up how words matter, as you all know, and we certainly appreciate you for. So short answer is yes, it's a critical time, and we've got to continue to share with others how words matter, and how we've really got to push for the policies that I think we'd like to see.
And another question, I think we have a time for this last one, and I think, Sonya, this is for you, but how will Listos work in the far north or with Imperial County where infrastructure is limited?
Thank you for that. This is something we're no stranger to. Even when we make attempts to attract community-based organizations to apply for the state dollars and grants that we have across, a variety of programs. To your point, the infrastructure doesn't exist. So we've really tried to think about our approaches in those, especially rural areas that don't also have connectivity to broadband and internet. So we've done some really great work so far. We've partnered with some hardware stores and convenience stores over the last couple months to bring out some messaging to those communities. Posters. I know that might sound silly, but helping just literally get the words on the places that people visit. So we're so fortunate that we've been able to really highlight wildfire preparedness in the last several months. And then again, going back to that calling, right? All of our residents have phones in those areas, or most of them. We even see that with our unhoused neighbors, still have access through a phone of some sort. So in those areas, I think, our phone banking program becomes even more critical to have that dialogue and raise that awareness. So just example of 2 tactics there, Regina.
No, great. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank all the speakers. I know that we are right at time, and I wanted to thank everyone for coming today. I wanted to remind everyone that after this briefing, you will get a recording, a list of the speaker bios. Sandy, you can nod your head if I'll have photos or headshots of anyone or not have headshots. But that will be coming from Jessica Martin from Ethnic Media Services, and that should be in your inbox later. today. And then Sonia, if you can remind us just one more time where we would get those social media posts,
Of course.
where would
you
we
yeah.
get those?
And I'll ask a team member to also drop it in the chat. So it's an easy click, but listoscalifornia.org. And right up at the top, you'll see Resource Hub, and all of the things are searchable there. So you can find it in whatever language, you know, if it's the 13 plus languages we've got in those materials, you know, or otherwise. There we go. Thank you so much, Koi. That Resource Hub link is there.
Perfect. Thank you all for joining us. And until next time.